Hello, everyone, and welcome to this final installment, at least for now, in our series on avoiding plagiarism. So far, we've covered different types of plagiarism and also some major reasons why students are tempted to plagiarize. Today, we're going to cover the third and last big reason in this series of why students may plagiarize. But while the previous two videos dealt with cases in which students may be tempted to intentionally misrepresent somebody else's work as their own, with the reason we're going to talk about now, the intentionality tends to be a little bit more ambiguous. And that is because it also tends to show up around a kind of gray form of plagiarism than what we've really been talking about so far. So this is something that's often called patch plagiarism or patch writing. So patch plagiarism looks sort of like this. What happens is that a student who has been taught to summarize and paraphrase sources in their paper tries to do that, but in a way that is still so close to the original text that it's really hard to say whether the student has put the ideas into their own words at all. So take a look at this sample here. We have the original passage, and then we have a patch written paragraph, okay? So take just a moment to look at these two and see if you can identify the similarities and differences between the two of them. Okay, so what you might have noticed is that while the sentence structure of the past written paragraph is somewhat different than the original passage, some really key terms have been borrowed. So, we have the term everyday experts. We have actually automaticity that separates experts from novices, the ability to come to the right conclusion. Okay, it's really just eventually that's been taken out here. Okay, so what we have is like really key words and phrases have been mostly preserved with maybe a word or two here removed and the clause structure moved around a little bit. So it's for all intents and purposes, almost, or at least very, very similar to the original passage. And it's really hard to say that this is actually the student's own words. Whereas we see in the effective summary example here that this has actually summarized it in a way that makes it a little bit shorter. And the writer has used the strategy of taking this really kind of distinctive word, automaticity, that's not a word you hear all of that often, and placing that in quotation marks so that it's clear that it's a term that was used. And in some cases, it could actually you may put in quotation marks a term that is actually kind of invented by the author. But it's used here in order to show that this is a word that the student got from their original source. Okay, so how does patch writing happen? Well, there's like with any form of plagiarism, there's a lot of different reasons. Sometimes the student is in a panic and just didn't take the time to summarize or paraphrase effectively, for example. But the reason I really want to focus on in this video is one that arises among students who are often really good at studying. So not intending to be dishonest, not intending to be sloppy or anything like that, but students who are really good students. So the reason that I'm going to talk about here is overdependence on sources. And overdependence can kind of run on a continuum. And by sources, I can mean many different kinds of sources. The source could be a textbook, a teacher, a piece of research, etc. So sometimes this is a confidence issue, but it's a confidence issue that occurs among students who tend to get good grades already. So students who know how to study. These are students who are excellent at reading and memorizing the information that they find in a textbook or in their notes from class. And when it comes time to write something of their own, usually one of the following things happens. So they might have some difficulty differentiating their own ideas from the source. So they might have some trouble. They think of something and are like, oh, okay, wait, did I get that from somewhere else or did I come up with that on my own? Okay. And there's strategies for dealing with this that I'll talk about in a second. But it may simply be a kind of identity crisis that you don't know if your ideas are genuinely yours or if you got them from somewhere else. In other cases, it could be that the student is simply convinced that they have no new ideas to add, that having read so much about a topic, you just kind of come to think that, well, there's nothing else to be said. There is nothing original I can possibly add to this conversation. So all of the ideas are taken. So all I can really do is paraphrase and summarize and potentially steal what other people have already said. One other thing that might happen is that the student just becomes convinced that even if they do want to take some ownership over their ideas, even if they do have some original thoughts to add here, that the words that basically they can't come up with any additional words to use to talk about these ideas. That whatever they have to say about the topic, it can't possibly be better than the words of this professional writer who is their source. So if you think that this describes you, then I do want to encourage you to recognize that writing in college is about developing your own ideas. It's not just about repeating what other people have said, whether those people are your teacher or the experts or anybody else. We are interested in seeing you grow in your ability to create and defend your own arguments, not just tell us what we want to hear. So, there are some practical things that you can do while you are preparing to write. First of all, when you take notes on a source, do go ahead and transcribe some useful quotes, things that you think are particularly distinctive or where you really like the wording. Your entire essay can't be quotes, but you can have a few well-chosen quotes inserted in there that help, define a term really, really well, or that illustrate a novel concept, or maybe it's a really vivid example that you would like to refer to. So pick and choose, be selective about the things that you want to quote directly. Then, when you are done reading, close the book or the PDF file that you're working from and write down your own summary. And importantly, try to do it without looking. Okay, so write down the author's main argument and maybe summarize some key examples, again, without looking at their words. And this can help you kind of develop a summary that's more independent from exactly what the writer says than if you were just looking directly at the paragraph where the argument is laid out. Secondly, after you've read and after you've taken notes and after you've closed the book or the file, write a brief response. Okay, what did you think? Were you persuaded by the author's argument? What arguments and evidence worked for you and what didn't? Writing in an academic setting is almost always in conversation with what other people are saying on a topic. It's not really about developing some crazy wild idea that, oh my gosh, nobody has ever thought of this before. It's more about being able to synthesize and pull together ideas to respond to what other people are saying, to come up with new ways of looking at or talking about a topic than what is already being said. Okay, it is perfectly fine if your writing responds to somebody else. It just shouldn't copy someone else, at least not in the way that we saw with this sample we looked at earlier. So after you have read your source, taken notes, written a summary, sit down and write a brief response about what you thought. This can often be a way of sort of sparking those thoughts, sparking those original ideas, thinking about sources as things that you can talk back to, not just something that you are mining for facts and quotes. Okay, so we at the Avila University Writing Center have actually created a note-taking worksheet that is designed to help you through this process and can also, by the way, help you kind of keep your research organized as you go. So depending on how you are accessing this video, you can either download it by clicking the link in the description or just by navigating directly to the Writing Center website. So hopefully at this point, having seen this video series, you should see that avoiding unethical behavior in your academic writing is not just about knowing how to use quotation marks or to format a citation in APA, though we, of course, have videos covering those skills and we're happy to help you with them. Combating this kind of temptation often involves understanding yourself better and becoming more mature and thoughtful in your overall approach to writing. So I hope this video series gives you something to think about, as well as some practical solutions for confronting the kind of study problems that can lead you down this very dark path. And just remember that we in the Writing Center are always here to help you on this journey. So thank you very much for watching.